This video is for every 17-year-old, 16-year-old, 18-year-old, 19-year-old who's considering going to college or quitting college right now. Should I spend the next 4 years going to college? Hopefully I can equip the parents and the kids to make a call with as little societal pressure as possible. When I lived in Austin, my next door neighbor was 18 years old. He was at this important decision in his life where he was deciding whether he was going to go to college. And I knew his parents, and it's kind of interesting because I sit halfway between his parents and him, so I kind of have both sides. He decided to enroll at Pepperdine. After a semester, he didn't really like it, and I think a lot of it was because it was just kind of expected that he go to college there. I had developed a rapport with him, and he used to work out with me at my home gym after school and whatnot. And so I was like, hey man, let's go for a walk. And I think we walked for about an hour, and we just walked around the neighborhood, and I'm pretty sure that that conversation significantly shifted the trajectory of his life. There we go. All right. The reason most people go to college is because that is what's expected. They don't think about the decision, they just do it because it feels like the next natural path. It's the same thing for having kids and getting married and buying a house, but let's not get into that. He went from going to Pepperdine to dropping out. His friends, his family, his friends' parents started looking at him different. He was like the trouble child. He was like the I don't know about him. 2 years later, he now has $250,000 saved up as a 20-year-old, makes $200,000 a year right now as a sales guy. What I wanna do is break down the split in the road of two different lives that he could have lived, or that you could live, or that somebody that you know who's facing the decision could go through. And I'll tell you how the conversation I had with him went. What's up, man? So I said, listen, you're at a crossroads right now. We have crossroads every day in our lives. I was like, but some crossroads are bigger than others. And when you're trying to make a decision, you have to think, how reversible is this decision? And how much long-term impact does it have? If I'm choosing between Chinese and Mexican for lunch, it's a split in the road, and it's really not gonna affect much for me down the road. Choosing to go and commit 4 years of my life between $50,000 and $200,000 of money and the lost income that I would have made during that period of time, those are very big, irreversible decisions, and they need to be treated with the same amount of respect. And a lot of people don't, because they make that decision because their parents are telling them to, which seems like the overused one, but realistically because they don't want to be the kid who did it wrong, who didn't do what they were supposed to do and didn't do the next natural step. That's a terrible reason to go to college. I would like you to approach it with a decision-making framework that makes sense. So it starts with, and this is me telling him this, I was like, what problem are you solving? He's like, well, I want to make money. So the question is, 4 years from now, if you have a degree and you lost the money and you lost the earning potential you had during those 4 years, is that you more able to generate income than an alternative you? Because what we have to analyze is not the cost of college, but the opportunity cost of going to college. The opportunity cost is the loss of potential gain from other alternatives when one alternative is chosen. So when we choose to go to college, there's an opportunity cost that exists, and it is the single greatest cost that people do not take into consideration. It's the cost of not doing, of what you could have done in the meantime. One is it's gonna cost you money because you actually gotta spend money to do it. The second way it costs you money is that you're not gonna earn what you probably could earn full-time working if that's what you wanted to do. You got two sides there. If you spent 4 years versus starting a business and then 4 years later, the opportunity cost is the business you could have started and what you would have 4 years later. So I'm walking with him, and this is like a 1 hour, really in-depth, like this is probably deeper than he and I have been, because I'm still this neighbor from across the street that like makes money on the internet, right? But his parents like trusted me enough to be like, I know that you have a lot of influence over our son, and like we just want you to know that like we know you do, and so like please be careful. And I was like, I'm aware, he's in good hands. Don't be afraid for what I'm gonna tell your son. I was like, listen man, if you wanna make money, then you need income generating skills. Do you think your philosophy degree, your sociology degree, your psychology degree, your economics degree even, which is still a little more useful, is gonna give you actual skills to make money? He was like, I don't know. And so I'm here to tell you what actually makes money. There's this lie that has been sold that you need to learn general education. I can tell you ancient Chinese literature has never impacted my ability to make money. Aztec culture, don't know anything about it, but it's classes, and they somehow fool kids into thinking that if they take this class, they're now somehow gonna be more equipped to add value to the marketplace. If Alex were redoing the education system, the majors would be in accordance to the departments of a business. You'd have marketing, and it would have the actual ways to market, which is creating the materials of marketing and then how to distribute it. You'd have sales, how to get strangers to give you money. Delivery portion, which would be either physical products delivery or services delivery, which would be customer experience, customer success, or it'd be technical, electrician, plumber, lawn mower, whatever it is. So then you have the actual technical component of the services delivered, and then you have the supporting services, which are like finance, HR, legal. Those would be the things that people should major in, because those are the things that you're gonna get hired to do. Google stopped requiring a college degree. Big tech corporations have stopped it because they realized it too, that it's not value additive. If I'm a doctor or a lawyer, you need a degree, sure, but for the 99% of people who don't fall into the 6 fucking careers that you have to have one, people are like, Alex, you went to Vanderbilt. I graduated a year early, so I tried to get out as fast as I possibly could. One of the regrets that I have is that I could have started sooner. sooner. And the reason why I didn't drop out of college is because I was too shit scared to disappoint my father. If you're gonna do it eventually, you might as well do it now. When I see the guys who are starting at 18, I'm like, man, I wish I had started then rather than 23. I would have 5 more years. Zooming back out, I'm walking in the street, we're talking together. And I told him this line, I said, the world doesn't need another 3-1 business degree from Pepperdine. Another B student who graduates because he didn't really give a shit, right? He would just do good enough that he would get through. And this is what he brought up. He's like, but what about like the social experience of college? I was like, so do you think that if you don't go to college, you're not gonna be able to party with people who are your age? I was like, real talk. And he was like, well, like, kind of. If the problem to be solved is to socialize you, there are way more efficient ways to socialize you than spending $200,000 and not making income. You can work all day and then make my objective for this period of time to have fun, then fucking work all day and then literally go out every single night. And you'll end up debt-free with savings and have a hell of a crazy 4 stories. And that's fine if that's what you want to do. I was like, is that what you want to do? He's like, no. And I think at some point in the conversation, he's like, I kind of want to do what you do. And I was like, well, then you got to learn the skills that I had to start fucking 5 years older than you to start learning, right? And the first thing was you had to learn how to sell. Let's just go down that path. If you're watching this and you're like, well, I don't like sales. I told you all the other departments that you could focus on. If you're like, you know what, I like being behind a camera. Then cool. What do you think behind a camera means in a business? Behind a camera means you're making content, you're making commercials. Pick one. That's what video is used for, right? If you're like, I like writing words. What do you think writing words are used for in business? They're used to sell shit or deliver shit. That's it. Or legal to protect people from selling and delivering shit. I like dealing with people. It's like, well, it depends. Are you a little bit more aggressive? You might like sales. If you're a little bit more passive-ish, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, you might like more of like the HR, or you might like recruiting. You might like selling people rather than selling products. Different ways of thinking about it. And so you can take your skills and then bucket them into which of these departments make more sense, and then that's what I'm gonna focus on. Zooming back out. So I said, now we need to look at your 3-1 degree, $200,000 of debt 4 years later, versus 4 years from now, you're gonna have saved money this whole period of time. So he's living with 4 guys because I was like, dude, you're living cheap. That's how this works. So he saves a lot of money, which is why he has $250,000 saved up at 20. That's not from Alex doing anything. Like, he worked for it. He worked for it and he saved every dollar that he made. And what do you think he's gonna be able to do in 4 years? He's gonna be able to start his own thing with a ton of capital and skills. As we're walking through these 4 years, what do we think happens now? He's like, I really like sales. Now, he happened to have liked sales. The blessing that he got was he had a mentor, which I'll say was me. I could see his personality. I was like, dude, I think you do well here. And he did like it, and he did well. But if he was that camera guy and he really liked more of that stuff, or if he was really techie, I would have been like, dude, go start coding. And so all of like, you have this base skill and it's like, where do I want to apply it? If you're like, I don't know, you're never going to know, because how would you know? You know by starting, and then you'll gain context to make the decision later. All you know is the experiences you have. And so all you have to do is just always look around every so often and be like, have I learned everything that I'm going to learn from this branch? And if you've learned everything you're going to learn, then at that point you can make the pivot, right? But if you're like, dude, there's still a lot for me to learn. Do I want to learn that? Is it the direction I want to keep going? I remember when I did my first 2 years of consulting, I looked down the road 25 years and I was like, I don't want that life. This is a hack that I will give you for very big decisions, is that you want to keep thinking on it, keep chewing on it, keep digesting it until you can get into a single statement, which is, for him, 4 years from now, given the cost, which of these 2 paths will give me the most potential for my future? And he was like, well, I think the other one. And I was like, then what are you gonna do? So he decided to drop out, and he ended up going to sales, and he was terrified. In the beginning, he sucked at sales because he had never done it before. Of course he would suck. And of course you will suck too, because you haven't done it. But how do you think you get good? You start by sucking and then you suck less. That's how it works. Till eventually you look back after hundreds and hundreds and thousands of repetitions and you're like, oh, I'm actually pretty good at this. And it's reasonable that you be good because you've done it 1,000 fucking times. He likes sales. It's probably gonna be the direction that he takes directionally in his life. He's like, what do I need to learn now? So I was like, okay, how do you move up? He's like, I can start a business. I was like, yeah. I was like, what skills are you gonna need to start a business? I gotta know how to market. I was like, well, you already learned how to cold call. I was like, that's your first acquisition channels. We got that handle, which is why I put him there. He's like, okay, so I have that, so I can get customers, all right. And I know how to sell, so I got that. And I was like, what are you gonna deliver? He's like, well, I really do like teaching sales. I was like, well, who the fuck have you taught sales to? He's like, I guess I haven't. And I was like, sounds like a skill you need to have. He's got to learn the skill of how to transfer a skill from himself to somebody else. What are the other skills he's gonna have to learn? Well, he's gonna have to learn how to do finances. He's gonna have to get contracts set up so he can have services agreements, things like that. But again, these are all Googleable things that you can do. You can figure those things out in, a couple days. It's not a big deal. For the parents who are watching and the kids who are watching this at home are trying to make the decision is, do I think that 4 years from now, with $50,000 to $200,000 in absolute costs, and probably higher than that in opportunity cost of the path not taken, which of these two paths will lead me closer to where I want to go. And if the goal is to make income, then you have to look at that $200,000 and all the things you could buy with that $200,000 in 4 years of time and think, is there another way that I could reverse engineer 4 years to get me to where I want to go? Or if you just really like the technical expertise that you have, you go super deep on the technical expertise and then you bolt on one additional skill. This is the one skill I will give you that you need to bolt on to instantly give yourself the lift in whatever career you have. You got to learn how to deal with people. You got to learn how to manage. You got to learn how to lead. And you're like, that sounds like the soft tough. And it is, but it's also how you're going to get promoted. It's how you get respect. It's how you gain influence. And you also realize that the technical thing that you're really good at is probably not the thing you're going to be doing in the business. You just got to know it well enough to teach it to somebody else. His parents came to me after I talked to him and they're like, Alex, can you please just sell me again on why he should be, you're telling him to quit college? I was like, I'm not telling him to quit college. I'm telling him to make the best decision for where he wants to be in 4 years. I'm not telling him not to get educated. I'm telling him to get super educated in the thing that he wants to do. The best people in the world at anything learn for themselves. They are self-taught. If you can adopt that mentality, then the world is your oyster because you realize that you can learn whatever you want, whenever you want. You don't need a certification or permission to do that. Which of these paths 4 years from now, given the opportunity cost, is going to get me furthest towards my goal? There we go. All right. What's up, man?
What's up? What's up?
So I was responding to the comments that you had that they didn't think that you were real. So this is to my YouTube audience to know that Jacob is indeed a real person. Can you confirm that you lived as my neighbor next to my house?
I can confirm.
And that we did work out every day after school.
Yep. This is true.
And then, how old are you now?
I am 20.
Still can't drink yet. Tough life. So you're in sales now, right? What are you making right now?
I'll probably hit 250. I did 113 the first 6 months of this, and I'm already on track. I'm already ahead of that.
Nice to be king. And then, how much money you have saved up?
210.
210. Okay, so I thought it was 250. I got the 250 mixed up, so it's 210. What would you say has been the biggest mental mind shift, change, etc. from our talks and our chats?
That's a good question.
Well, you decided not to go to college, right? Is that the walk that did it?
That's the walk that closed it. You closed me very hard on that walk.
I did go really aggressive on that walk, to be fair. So you had now at that point been in school for a semester. What was the reason you decided to take that jump?
I think the line that really hit when you said, and I'm paraphrasing it, it's socially acceptable to fail at entrepreneurship because you're still in school and you're using it as a crutch. I think that was like, oh, that's it. So I knew I needed to go all in.
Yeah, so because you were dabbling on the side and you weren't succeeding at the entrepreneur thing, which is what you really wanted to do, and you were using college as a social safety net to give yourself an excuse for why you weren't winning.
Exactly.
And so then you decided to go all in on it.
Then we went all in. We did it.
All right, say hi to Mosey.
Now I'm in the closet.
You're in the closet. Say hi to Mosey Nation.
What's up?
So that is to confirm that Jacob is indeed a real person with a real pulse and a real story, and if it worked for him, it can work for you. Thanks, brother. Appreciate you. Go back to sales calls.
I'm trying to sell over here.
Jacob was lucky as hell that he just happened to have been my neighbor. That's right, Jacob. I could just tell that he was incredibly hungry. I knew that he had this really deep desire to prove himself. When I see something like that, I'm like, cool. And the way I tested that, I was like, show up after school every day. We'll work out. And I wanted to see if he would show up. And like clockwork, no matter what, every day he would text me. It wasn't like me having to text him or remind him. I knew that he had that desire and he would take as much as I was willing to give. If this video caused you to question a couple of things or maybe even brought up more questions than it did answers because it opened up your mind to some things, what I'd recommend doing is watching this video, my video about how to analyze opportunities. And so if you're looking at, okay, maybe I don't do college, but what path do I go on? That will give you the framework to make the decision on how you analyze opportunity in your life and a business that you might potentially start, etc. Hope you enjoy. They're like, when are you going to start Hormozy University and train these guys on the skills? And maybe someday.